Have you heard about the nuclear apocalypse? It's a Cold War legend. Superpowers would drop nukes around the world. Everything and everyone would perish, basically the end of times. There were two villains in this legend, the superpowers and nuclear power. Nuclear power is the most villainized energy source in the world, and rightly so. Nuclear power made weapons of mass destruction, what we saw in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Nuclear power also led to massive disasters like Fukushima and Chernobyl. So for decades, nuclear meant only one thing: flashing red lights and danger signs. But today there's a rethink. Could nuclear energy solve climate change? Is nuclear energy the perfect fuel? European countries certainly think so. They're reeling under a major energy crisis. Natural gas prices have shot through the roof in Europe, almost 600% up. Europe's solar and wind farms have been hit by erratic weather, and their biggest supply is playing hardball. That's Russia, by the way. And here's something you must know. 90% of Europe's natural gas comes from outside, 43% from Russia. Now they're suffering a severe shortage. But President Vladimir Putin of Russia is in no mood to help. He has refused to ship more natural gas to the EU. He has refused to replenish their storage sites. Why? Because politics. And there's nothing new here. He who controls energy is king in geopolitics. We saw it with West Asian oil, and we're seeing it with Russian natural gas. President Putin is using the energy crisis as leverage over Europe. Leverage for what? What does Putin want? He wants rapid approval for a key gas pipeline. It is called Nord Stream 2. Now, this pipeline will run from Russia to Germany through the Baltic Sea bed. The work is done. Only the final approval is awaited. And this is Putin's way of giving Europe a nudge, holding them hostage, more like. Europe can blame Putin all they want, but the fact is they messed up too. Europe's green transition is far from perfect. So President Putin says, your policy, your problem.
The rise in gas prices in Europe was a consequence of the power shortage and not vice versa. And there is no need to shift the blame onto others, as some of our partners are trying to do. Over the past decade, step by step, systemic flaws have been laid in the European energy sector. It was this which led to a large-scale market crisis in Europe.
So what's the lesson from this energy crisis? Our traditional sources remain a political minefield like oil and natural gas, and our green alternatives remain volatile like solar and wind energy. So what do? Well, Europe is going the nuclear way. 10 EU countries have written a letter to the European Commission. These are the countries: France, Bulgaria, Croatia, the Czech Republic, Finland, Hungary, Poland, Slovakia, Slovenia and Romania. 10 countries, what do they want? They want nuclear power to be recognized as green power. It's controversial stuff. The EU announced a list of green sources in April last year. It had solar power, it had wind power, geothermal power, but no nuclear power. So why is there a rethink now? Because France wants it. France is pushing for it. 70% of electricity in France comes from nuclear power. President Macron wants to export this model. He wants Europe to embrace the nuclear option.
We absolutely must prepare for technologies that break away from traditional ones and for deep transformation in nuclear. The promise of what we call small modular reactors, small reactors that are more adaptable and safer, since safety is a key point in the nuclear debate. Technologies to better handle our waste, on some of which progress is being made and some we haven't even thought of yet. And here lie efforts on research that for some are already very advanced.
Does Europe agree with Macron? Well, not really. There is a strong anti-nuclear movement in Europe. Germany, for instance, plans to shut all reactors by 2022. Austria, Luxembourg, Spain, Denmark, they all share Germany's position. So the EU is divided on nuclear energy, I would say much like the rest of the world. Divided. Can you really count on nuclear power as a green alternative? Let's try and look at both sides. Nuclear power is created through a process called fission, basically splitting uranium atoms. This creates a lot of energy, and I mean an insane amount of energy. So advantage number one, there is no carbon emission. There is no burning, there is no smoke. Advantage number two, a smaller footprint, smaller land footprint. A 1,000 megawatt nuclear power plant requires 1 square mile to operate. Compare that to wind power, 360 times more land. Solar power, 75 times more land. So does this mean it's time to go nuclear? Well, not yet. You see, pollution is not just about carbon emissions. Nuclear waste is equally, if not more, problematic. It remains hazardous for tens of thousands of years. And what if it spills? We're looking at a massive nuclear disaster then. The next problem is cost. Nuclear reactors are not cheap. It's easy for France to build them. But what about small island nations like the Maldives or Kiribati? How can they afford these nuclear projects? And I'll show you the price difference. 1 kilowatt of solar energy costs $1,000. 1 kilowatt of nuclear energy costs $6,500 to $12,250. Anywhere between that. So we must guard against this greenwashing of nuclear energy, this nuclear baptism. It's an easy way out for developed countries. They have the money, they have the know-how, and they have the experience. But remember, climate change affects the entire planet, not just France and company. Some experts suggest using nuclear fuel as a bridge, like a temporary source during the green transition. But let me tell you this, there is nothing temporary about nuclear energy. The plants take years to build, and their waste lies around for 250,000 years. That's a tall price for a temporary fix. I know that nuclear power seems exciting, no emissions, almost unlimited power, but are we going out of the frying pan into the fire? Well, only scientists, frankly, can answer this question. We ignored their advice once, and look where we are. So let scientists decide on the nuclear pivot, not politicians. Until then, focus on the sources we know to be safe, like the sun and the wind. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.